All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Emily Bell, and I'm the Communications Coordinator for the Florida Wildflower Foundation. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Protecting Roadside Wildflowers. For those of you not familiar with our organization, our mission is to protect, connect, and expand native wildflower habitats through our education, research, planting, and conservation programs. Our work is made possible primarily through the through the sales and renewals of the Florida State Wildflower License Plate, which you can see here. This is the old plate, and this new plate's been on the road for a number of years now. These funds, along with donations and memberships, allow us to support and create projects that build awareness and knowledge of native wildflowers and plants throughout Florida. We'd like to encourage those of you who find our programs valuable to consider becoming a member, making a donation, or purchasing the state wildflower license plate. And if you purchase or have the wildflower plate, you are eligible for a membership. So just let us know if you have the tag, and we can get you set up in the database. Be sure also to check out our website for resources on planting and growing wildflowers, to learn where to see wildflowers, for upcoming events, and so much more. We're also on social media, and you can find us on most platforms at FLA Wildflowers. We've got some great events coming up. Our next webinar, Milkweed Monarchs and OE in Florida, It's Complicated, will be presented on July 17th at 2 p.m. by Dr. Jarrett Daniels, an associate professor of entomology at the University of Florida and curator of the McGuire Center for Lepidoptera and Biodiversity at the Florida Museum of Natural History. He will share the latest science-based information and explain the impact of the OE disease on monarch populations. Our August webinar, Designing Landscapes with Native Plants, will be presented by Cadence Landscape Architects Associate Stephanie Dunn on Wednesday, August 21st. This webinar will give us insight on how the Cadence team works with the surrounding natural habitat to guide their design approach in each specific project. Stay tuned as well for some great field trips coming up. Our next trip to the Guantanamo Matanzas National Estone Research Reserve at Ponte Vedra Beach is Saturday, July 13th. On this trip, we'll take a leisurely stroll along the dune line to explore the wildflowers and other plants that thrive there. We also have a field trip scheduled in anticipation of fall blooms. We're partnering with the Nature Conservancy and Florida Native Plant Society to tour Tiger Creek Preserve on Saturday, October 19th. So stay tuned for registration available on that one. And again, be sure to follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter, or check out flawildflowers.org/events to stay on top of our webinars, field trips, and other opportunities. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. All attendees are muted with cameras off. If you have questions, please use the Q&A feature to submit them. The chat is active and we will share some links and information there, but we do not monitor it for questions. So please use the Q&A. We will address questions at the end of the talk as time permits. And if your question is not answered, you can reach us as well at info@flawildflowers.org. Additionally, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website, as well as our YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. When it is available, you'll receive an email from us with a link to the recording, along with a resource page with additional links from the webinar. And now I would like to introduce our speaker. Marina Mertz is a Florida native with a passion for preserving Florida's beauty and for future generations. She joined the foundation in 2022 as the Panhandle Wildflower Alliance Liaison, where she worked with FDOT and local advocates and governments to establish and maintain wildflower corridors on roadsides, utility easements, public gardens, and schools. Recently, she has become the foundation's Roadside and North Florida Programs Coordinator, bringing the experience of a longtime small business owner and community volunteer to the position. Marina holds a degree in environmental studies and a certificate in urban and regional planning from Florida State University, and is currently pursuing her Master Naturalist and Restoration Florida Master Naturalist certifications. She's an avid gardener and maintains a large vegetable garden. She's steadily converting the rest of her home landscape to native plantings with the goal of establishing a small refuge in the heart of downtown Tallahassee. She loves to be out in the field, improving her botanizing skills, removing invasives, and spends a lot of her free time hiking, camping, and bike touring with her family. So without further ado, we'll get to the main event, and I'll hand it over to Marina. Oh, Marina, there you are.
Hey, thank you, Emily, for that introduction. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Okay. Yeah, so just recently on the 10th of June this month, I joined the Florida Wildflower Foundation as a staff member, where I'll be focusing on roadsides along with other programs. But I've been working for the past year and a half as a contractor with the foundation in the Panhandle region, where I've been lucky enough to dip my toes into wildflower roadsides. I've been meeting with volunteers for roadside surveys, talking with Public Works to expand programs, and communicating with the public about roadsides. I'm very excited to talk today about roadsides in Florida, their importance, and what the Florida Wildflower Foundation does and how you can help. So, why roadsides? Well, really, the answers are so numerous, we can't even get into them all today. It's hard to discount the role that roadsides can play in conservation when you start to understand the impact that roads have. Our road system within the United States is incredibly vast and impacts all but our most protected lands. It is estimated that up to 20% of the United States is ecologically affected by roads. This includes things like noise, erosion, habitat fragmentation, migration route disruptions, and more. Roadsides extend through all landscapes in Florida. My friends have a project called Project Remote that calculates the most remote areas in each state, how far you can be from a road. In Florida, that is 17 miles, and that is in the Everglades. But some good news is that ecological health, safety, and transportation do not have to be mutually exclusive. There are ways we can manage roads while minimizing their impact on wildlife and the surrounding environments. Florida is one of the most biodiverse states in the country. We have over 3,000 native plant species, and we are also one of the fastest growing states in the country. This graph shows Florida resident growth based on the US Census. The latest census data shows over 1,200 people move to Florida every day. As a result, each year, the area of 130 square miles is lost as wildlife habitat. The Florida Chamber Foundation has forecasted around another 250,000 new residents coming to Florida in 2024. As we rapidly develop and expand our urban areas, we are losing our wildlands. We have lost over 11 million acres of forest and wetlands in the last 50 years. Roadsides are not wildlands, and they cannot take the place of true land conservation areas. But roadside vegetation can serve as habitat for small mammals, amphibians, reptiles, ants, beetles, spiders, and more. They can provide food, breeding, and nesting opportunities and connectivity. Sometimes they can be the only semi-natural area remaining in a heavily altered landscape. There are around 100,000 acres of vegetated right-of-way bordering over 12,000 miles of state roads managed by the Florida Department of Transportation. This is just state roads. Currently, roughly 3,000 acres of these state roadsides are planted or naturally occurring wildflower habitat. The primary goals for roadside management, safety, noxious weed management, and soil stabilization are compatible with native plantings or protections of naturally occurring wildflowers. In fact, I would argue it's the best way to meet those goals. It is safe, cost-effective, and environmentally friendly, while meeting the needs of the users, protecting water quality, stabilizing slopes, and preventing erosion, safeguarding biodiversity, sequestering carbon dioxide, and providing habitat. Plants are the basis of the food chain, and plant pollination by insects is essential to our health, global food webs, and biodiversity. But globally, pollinators are in decline. Roadsides can play a significant role in the conservation of these declining populations. Roadsides rich with a diversity of native flowering plants can support more pollinators than those mowed. So often nothing is allowed to bloom or planted with non-native grasses. In Florida, Bahia grass and Bermuda grass are commonly planted along our roadsides post-disturbance or construction. We can adapt management strategies in a way that supports these remnant native plant populations and incorporate new roadside plantings to make them more valuable to pollinators. Roadsides restored or managed to support native vegetation provide nectar and pollen. They serve as larval host and provide relatively undisturbed nesting sites compared to, say, a heavily used agricultural field. Studies have found bees to be twice as abundant on roadsides with native plants compared to those dominated by non-native grasses. Isolation and fragmentation put population of plants and animals at greater risk of local extinction. Roadside habitat can restore or provide some connectivity between remnant or restored habitat patches, acting as a wildlife corridor. The goal of a wildlife corridor is to facilitate movement of plants and animals, although people generally only think about animals, between those fragmented landscapes. Studies have shown butterfly populations within areas connected by corridors have higher densities and increased genetic diversity. There is a potential for roadsides to act as dispersal corridors or stepping stones, especially for migratory species, allowing them to forage, mate, establish new colonies, and move between natural areas. If you're looking for more information about pollinators, we have handouts on how to attract bees and butterflies to your home garden. We have pollinator profiles and a lot more on our website. Pollinators.org is also a wonderful resource. Just last week was Pollinator Week, so there's a lot out there right now. For the most part, roadsides in Florida are disturbed areas that are maintained in an early successional state, supporting many native grasses and wildflowers. This means that they are an open habitat dominated by grasses and forbs, which is just a way of saying flowering plant that is not a grass or a graminoid. The tree canopies do not dominate the sites, and they need to be maintained with some level of disturbance like fire or mowing to maintain their high productivity of species. Florida ecosystems are fire adapted. They have evolved with fire regimes where wildfires would sometimes occur as much as once a year. This opens the canopy, allowing many species to thrive, and some even need fire to survive and reproduce. In a fire-repressed system, like we have in much of Florida, these roadsides can become even more critical, hosting threatened species like the pictured Harper's Beauty and white-top pitcher plant. Roadsides can be places where rare and threatened plants have held on precisely because of this mowing disturbance. Mowing can mimic some of the effects of fire by removing woody vegetation and shrubs encroaching on a roadside habitat. Fire ecology is a whole separate webinar, and we actually have one coming up on November 20th, so be sure to be here for that. But it is interesting to think about how mowing can mimic these natural processes where fire is not an option, and how we can use that to our advantage when when managing roadsides. Mowing generally has two aims along roadsides: to improve driver visibility and provide room for cars to safely pull over if necessary. There's no need to mow the entire portion of a roadway to achieve these goals. With a reduced mowing management plan, you can mow a portion of the roadside that's right next to the road, what we call the safety strip. You can mow that regularly, and you can allow the full width of the right-of-way to grow. Mowing improves the diversity of grassland habitats when done at frequencies of twice a year at most. Mowing once a year in late autumn, think after Thanksgiving, when pollinators are least active and wildflower seeds have fully matured, is a good general guideline. But even reductions in the frequency of mowing from every 3 weeks to 6 have shown a positive effect in the presence of pollinators. The other benefit when you reduce your frequency of full right-of-way mowing is an economic one. A 2014 report by the Florida Department of Transportation concluded that they could reduce costs by 30% by implementing practices like reduced mowing, and that roadside vegetation along state highway systems provided $1 billion in ecosystem services. In Santa Rosa County, reducing mowing has saved taxpayers $210,000 in just the first 3 years of the program, and they added in even more county roadsides into their program just this spring. Less mowing reduces cost to taxpayers by saving an estimated $1,000 per mile per year. The other economic impact of wildflower roadsides is in agriculture and the benefit they have for pollinators. It is estimated that native bees in the United States contribute $3 billion a year in fruit and vegetable pollination services. Roadside wildflowers can be a stable, consistent food source for pollinators, supplying them with habitat and nourishment. Crop pollinators are responsible for every third bite of food we eat. That means protecting pollinator populations is essential for global food security. Pollinator-dependent food crops like fruits, vegetables, and nuts make up a critical part of our diet. Our plates would look really boring without bees. Can you imagine a Florida summer without watermelon? I, for one, do not want to have to do that. Wildflowers can also play an important role in tourism with their beauty. Tourism in Florida is a $76 billion industry and the main economic engine of the state's economy. Florida could promote its growing wildflower roadsides to tourists, like our northern neighbors do for fall leaves. Wildflowers along the road make our drives more pleasant and have even been shown to increase driver alertness by reducing the monotony of a drive. Here in the Panhandle, we have developed a wildflower map that highlights the region's best wildflower routes. These brochures are incredibly popular at our county welcome stations. We hope to eventually create these for every region in the state. Just remember to always practice safety and roadside etiquette when viewing wildflowers. Pull off the road safely, wear a safety vest if you have one. And please do not pick the flowers. We need them to stay and make seeds to replenish and grow our wildflower areas. And it's illegal to harvest seeds or pick flowers of any endangered or threatened species. So how does the Florida Wildflower Foundation help? What roles do we play? Working with county public works or other appropriate roadside or utility rights-of-way managers, we have experts that can conduct seasonal surveys of roadsides to locate and characterize native wildflower areas. Surveys are 3 seasons, conducted in spring, summer, and fall to ensure a comprehensive species inventory. Volunteers located in the counties often help with these surveys as well. These pictures here are from Leon County surveys done in 2023. Once a roadside has been surveyed, we can then make recommendations for managing the wildflower populations for seasonal beauty to boost pollinator habitat and to maximize that wildflower seed dispersal and germination. We can provide management plans and standard operating procedures that include guidelines for mowing, extent, width, and frequency, and may also address the removal of invasive species when present. These plans can be updated as needed and as community input is received. We want to avoid the things happening in these 2 pictures here, flowers being mowed down in bloom and mowing being done when those shoulders are wet. We do not have the ability to implement management plans or the authority to enforce them. We can just provide guidance and suggestions to roadside vegetation managers. FDOT currently sells seed mixes of Florida native ecotypes and non-native species, including cosmos, moss verbena, Coreopsis basalis, crimson clover, and Drummond's phlox. We advocate for only seeding Florida native ecotypes, but understand the constraints FDOT is working under as our native seed supply is not currently adequate to address their needs. Florida Wildflower Foundation is invested in exploring ways to improve native seed availability with the hope of influencing their decisions with seed purchasing and planting. We only work with FDOT in an advisory capacity, and we do not implement or provide management for plantings. We host the FDOT Wildflower page as a courtesy to the department. We also provide county, state, and regional level support for volunteers as they work to designate and conserve roadside wildflower habitats. We can provide guidance on approaching public officials, we can attend meetings, provide presentations, and more. Please reach out with any concerns, questions, or otherwise. So, how can you help? What role can you play? One thing you can do is help identify wildflower areas. We are looking for roadsides that host naturally occurring wildflowers. A good place to look is next to public conservation lands, like a national forest. You also want to have minimal driveways and business entrances and a right-of-way that's at least 5 to 6 feet wide. The presence of driveways and businesses can increase the calls for a more orderly looking landscape. We do want to encourage these businesses and homeowners to host these native wildflowers and natural looking landscape, but historically these higher density sites do not work out as designated county maintained wildflower roads and can often lead to overall pushback on the program. A narrow right-of-way will just not have the room beyond the needed safety strip to host habitat. You also want to look for areas that do not have heavy invasive pressure that will require intensive herbicide or mechanical removal methods. You can become a wildflower watcher. We have lots of wonderful volunteers that go out and survey roadsides. Pictured here, we have James Hargrove, Jim Folson, Mary Howard Edwards, Scott Copeland, Lily Anderson Messick. These are pictures from Liberty, Jackson, Gadsden County, and Franklin as well. We rely on volunteers to conduct ongoing surveys of sites, checking for compliance with management plans, noting the presence of invasives that might need treatment, tracking the species present within the designated areas, reporting broken or missing signage. These volunteers are invaluable, especially for counties that have adopted wildflower programs and need feedback on how well those efforts are going. We just launched this Monday a brand new form on the website to make this process even easier. This is very new, so if you have any suggestions on how we can make it even better, please let us know. You can report a naturally occurring wildflower area as well as issues with maintenance plan compliance. The more information you can provide, the better, like GPS coordinates, pictures, and species presence. But even if you don't have all that information, we are still interested in hearing this feedback and reporting it back to the proper management department. Another wonderful way to get involved is with our wildflower resolutions. These are resolutions passed by both cities and counties, which recognize the historical, environmental, and cultural significance of Florida wildflowers and pledges to conserve wildflowers through management, like reduced mowing. If you're interested in getting a resolution passed or updating an out-of-date one, we have an easy step-by-step directions on our website. And I'm also available to help walk you through every part of the process via phone, email, Zoom, or even when possible in person. This map shows what counties have adopted resolutions, but a lot of these counties' resolutions were adopted 10 years or more ago. I do back into them. These resolutions are the method by which you can ask for state roads to be appointed as wildflower roads. FDOT needs to see county support to proceed with designation. So if you're looking to address a state road, confirming that your county has a resolution or passing one is the first step. This is not as big or as scary as the process can make it seem, but it can be a bit political and requires a different level of involvement than roadside surveys. This allows for folks with different strengths to help join the process. Roadsides, when correctly managed, have an important role to play in conservation. I would encourage all of you to get involved. You have a role to play, whether it's by working with your county or city commissioners on a resolution, scouting for roadsides to add into the wildflower program, becoming a wildflower watcher, or conducting yearly surveys. I now want to go ahead and address any questions you all might have.
Great. Thank you so much, Marina. That was a lot of good information. We don't currently have any questions in the Q&A, so this is the time now. If you have any questions, please enter them. I'll get us started. Marina, I know one really common concern is regarding attracting pollinators to roadsides and what the impacts there might be. Can you talk a little bit about some of the research on how roadsides impact the animals that utilize them?
Yes, definitely. So the short answer is there's not enough research and there needs to be more done. But the long answer is that, roads are not, they're not optimal habitat. They have heavy metals, microplastics, noise pollution. Insects don't really want to live along roadsides. They're polluted and noisy. They're relegated there by agriculture and urban sprawl. The quality of the habitat isn't that high, but the quantity is, right? Roadsides have more, there's just so much roadside. So why shouldn't we be focused on how to improve them? Like we can do plantings that in a way that butterflies don't have to dart back and forth across the road because there's plenty of habitat there. And, you know, cars do kill butterflies, cars kill insects, but the idea is that you are, that you're, sorry, that they're not a net sink. They're not killing more butterflies than they support. In regions where preserving large habitats is no longer like an option, the conservation of roadsides can't be really dismissed. And there are studies that shown that habitat-sensitive butterflies are much less likely to leave area roadside planting that has native vegetation. So if you have adequate vegetation that's not being mowed down, you don't have as much of that traversing back and forth across the roadside. There are not a ton of studies about deer collision. That's one thing that people often think about as well with native vegetation, but there are no studies that have shown any increase in deer collision with native plantings. And some folks have even speculated that mowing the road actually produces tender-needed growth that actually attracts the deer to come to the roadside. So by not mowing, you could actually reduce that attraction.
Great, thank you. So a few questions popping up. Are there any roadside wildflowers in Miami?
You know, I am not that familiar with that part of the state. I am up here in the Panhandle, so I don't know if there's any other panelists that would be able to speak to that.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, generally, the more urbanized the area, the fewer roadside wildflowers occur. I know that DOT manages some planted roadside wildflowers along the turnpike towards South Florida, but Miami proper, I'm not really sure. But that's where we really need people to be let us know as well if they see those naturally occurring roadsides. Let's see, the question, would Alligator Alley be a good candidate? Potentially. And again, those are areas that may already have existing wildflowers, and that's really something we are interested in. Let's see. There's a question about burning occurring along roadsides. Is DOT or are there any agencies that burn along roadsides?
So sometimes the Forest Service will, if it's along, if it, you know, the road goes through our federal forest, they will burn along the roadsides. But a lot of times they use the roadside, the safety strip as a fire break, essentially. And they try not to let the road get too close to the road, but you will see burning along some of those wildfire, like especially State Road 65 here in Liberty County, you'll see burning along that roadside. And so you see a lot of really thriving, healthy wildflower populations along that road.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, DOT itself has never implemented any roadside burning. But if you drive through some of the big national forests during burn season, that's where it is most likely to happen. So there's a question, is there funding available for large landowners to manage lands to encourage wildflowers to contribute to the seed banks? There is not a lot of direct funding available for things like that. FWC has a private lands program that's definitely worth checking out. They can work with large landowners to help come up with management plans. They can access grant funds in some cases to help with burning and herbicide. A lot of that revolves around if you have threatened or endangered species. But that's a really good place to start because they can guide you. They keep up with funding that may be available, and they would really be the best folks to talk to. So for the FWC Private Lands Program, if you just Google that, it'll come up, and it's regional. So there'll be a regional coordinator for whatever region you're in. How can we get involved in participating in the roadside surveys? Marina, I'll throw that one to you.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm actually going to go to my next slide, and it has my email on there. So please email me if you would like to get involved, or you can fill out the Wildflower Watcher survey as well. So it really is going to depend on the county that you're in. Florida is really massive, right? You know, just here in the Panhandle, I've been working with 16 counties, you know, so all of them are going to be different. But you are going to want to reach out to anyone that's already working in the county. So if there's already folks that are doing that work in the county, I can hook you up with them. If there isn't, then we can start a wildflower program inside your county. And you know, you don't really need any special training or anything like that. You can become a wildflower watcher just by filling out those forms on our website. But if you'd like to get more involved, definitely reach out and we can start seeing where your county is at, if it has a resolution, if you'd like to work on a resolution, or if you'd like to just help with surveys. And if we determine that your county has a lot of interest and has a lot of possibilities, that's when we can come out and do those 3-season surveys.
Great. Any suggestions on how to get HOAs and CDD communities to embrace wildflower plantings by their entrances or monuments?
Yeah, so actually, you know, presentations like the one we just give can be really effective in HOAs. So we have some presentations that we can give to HOAs, and then we also have information that we can give to you that you can present to your HOA. And yeah, I think usually just approaching them, talking to them, making presentations, all of that can help influence it.
Yeah, so we actually have a list of presentations that we offer on our website under our education programs. We can provide a general overview of wildflowers in Florida and why they matter. We can talk about how to get started creating habitat and why that matters and why that's important. We also have brochures and guides, as Marina mentioned, that you can either download or order from us that we can send you, that you can provide to them as well. You can also, you know, get involved with your local Native Plant Society chapter, because some of them do some of that type of outreach and work as well. The last question, we have someone from Nashville, Tennessee is asking if we have any ideas for how we could get wildflowers on roadsides there. I think those conversations would have to start with if you have any organizations up in Nashville that work on issues similar to what we work on. I don't know if Tennessee has a Native Plant Society, but many states do. And I think those conversations would need to start there, and then with the departments or the folks who are in charge of transportation. Marina, any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know Tennessee does do some wildflower plantings with its Department of Transportation, but I'm not sure if they've signed onto the CCAA, but that could be a place to look too. That's for milkweed plantings for monarchs. But yeah, I would just look and see what FDOT or Tennessee Department of Transportation is doing already, and see how you can expand on that. And then again, you know, the same steps that we're doing here can be replicated in other states. Just working at that county level, you can use our resolution as you know, a draft for something that you can pass in your county. It doesn't have to be in Florida.
Absolutely. I do see the question, and we're getting some typed answers there as well, but do you have any program suggestions for schools? So we have a website. We have a grant program for schools, Seedlings for Schools, which will provide some seedlings to start a wildflower garden. We also have a whole page of curriculum and resources for schools. So I'll make sure we get the link up there. And we have a few more minutes, so we can see if any other questions come in, but otherwise we will wrap up shortly. I'm looking on your website and don't see the form for a watcher. Let's see. I think we put that link in the chat box, but can we put that link, the Wildflower Watcher link, in the chat box again?
Yes, and I also just put up on my shared screen that page where it shows you where you can access it.
Let's get these links up for you. Okay, great. The Seedlings for Schools link is in the chat box, as well as the Wildflower Watcher link. I also want to get the curriculum link, classroom resources. All right, I'm gonna put, oh, make sure that goes to everyone. Here's our classroom resources that we mentioned. And also gonna put, all right, and then I've also added our general education page. This is where you can find information about requesting a speaker or our brochures and everything like that. So that should be useful as well. All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us this afternoon. Just a quick reminder, I do see some questions coming in the chat about ways to access our materials. Please email us at info@flawildflowers.org if you can't find on our website what you're looking for, and we will be sure to get that information to you. So with that, we really appreciate everyone joining us, and we hope that you will join us next month on July 17th for monarchs and milkweed. And again, check out our website, flawildflowers.org, for our additional upcoming events. I think someone asked about the November webinar. Keep an eye for that one to get posted as well. It'll be on November 20th on fire ecology. So thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your afternoon.